There used to be a graying tower alone on the sea. You became the light on the dark side of me. Love remains a drug that's high and not the pill. But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become alive and the light that you shine can't be seen? I compare you to a kiss from a rose on the grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, stranger it feels, yeah. And now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave.
What is up, everybody? It's me, Aaron P, the motherfucker to be. Welcome to the newest member of the Ram Entertainment Podcast family. This is South by Southwesteros. This is my all-new Game of Thrones podcast. I'm going to be talking about Game of Thrones, all of Season 8. I'm going to be talking about all the seasons in general, but we're going to be focusing on Season 8. For the time being, there's only going to be 6 episodes, much like Season 8. If we do more, we'll do more. However, we're going to have to focus solely on Season 8 as a whole and all of the Game of Thrones lore that has come before that, some of which that has come after as well. This format is going to be a little bit different. If you're familiar with my other podcasts, it's going to be just, well, this episode in particular, the format is going to be completely different. It's going to be all Game of Thrones all the time for the most part. And for this episode, I'm going to be watching the episode and giving my thoughts on the scenes. I was going to just write out, make notes and stuff and discuss from there. However, I want to go in order in this episode. And then, because it's a fascinating episode. Season 8, episode 1, the title of the episode is Winterfell. It is a fascinating episode with a lot of ties to earlier episodes in the show, particularly the very first episode of Game of Thrones. So we're going to get into that. Throughout the next couple weeks, I will be having guests on the show, book analysis, even though we're well past the books, but there are some things in this series that are going to touch on some things in the books, things from the show. We're just going to have a lot of fun talking Game of Thrones. So with that said, if you guys are watching this at home right now and you guys want to watch along with me, this episode is going to be pretty much a lot of a walk along. I'm going to go ahead and start the episode, and while it's going through, HBO has their ads and stuff that pop on before that. Just want to go through and talk about how I got into Game of Thrones. I got into the game. Now, if you also, if you watching along with me, go ahead and press play, and I'm going to start talking, and then it's going to go straight into the show. HBO's ads are on right now, so you guys should be watching the ads. Zendaya is running. I'm going to turn my volume down a little bit so you guys don't hear a little background and stuff after that. However, start it now. Now, how I got into Game of Thrones is the show was already on. Show's already on. A friend of mine from college, my friend John, he was into it, and he had already been reading the books and all that. He had started the books. We were already adults by the time he had started the books, because the first Game of Thrones book came out in 1996. In 96, I was 13 years old. I'm 35 right now, so these books have been out for a very long time. It's been 25 years since the first book had been written. Now we've been waiting now, I want to say 8 years for the next book. So it's been a long haul for those of us who actually invested into both the books and the shows. The show's been on for 10 years now. This is the last season. It's been a great run. And I got into it. My friend John, he showed it to me. He was like, you know, you kind of dig this. It's got, you know, fantasy and dragons and political intrigue and stuff. And it took me a while to jump into it from like where it was, because just to be totally honest, it was kind of boring to me when I first started watching it. Like, I was just like, what the fuck is going on? What's happening? Dude from Lord of the Rings is probably gonna get killed again. I called that before. I was like, Sean Bean is just always in stuff to get killed. So I was like, Sean Bean's about to die soon. Something Sean Bean's gonna do is gonna kill him, because I'm like, eh. And then the books were just the books versus the show, way different monster. Way different monster, because the books have so many other characters. There's so much dialogue. These books are huge, but I've read the books. I'm all caught up on the books. You know, I'm waiting for the next book to come out, which it might come out. It may not. Sometimes this stuff happens. As an author, I can tell you guys now, it takes a very long time to write books. Especially if you have other projects coming through. If you're getting more lucrative offers to do other things, like George R.R. Martin, not only does he write books, he's also an executive producer on a couple of different TV shows. And if you write books, you know that TV money is better than writing money. So, right now the HBO logo is coming on, and the theme song is about to start in about 2 minutes. Well, let's start talking about that show now, actually, because they've done something different. With season 8, what I love is every time they do the opening credit, they show you the world of Westeros and basically where everything's going to happen. There's something that people missed in this episode when they started off as a wall breaking down and they go to a castle. That first castle that they go to is not Winterfell. Winterfell is actually the second castle that they go to. First castle that they go to is Last Hearth. Last Hearth is where the Umbers, House Umber is living, and that's one of the closest castles to the wall, by Eastwatch by the Sea. Where Eastwatch by the Sea is where the White Walkers blew up the wall and left. Next thing in the way is Last Hearth. Keep that in mind. We will talk about that later on in this episode. There's different sigils being shown. They go basically Winterfell, Last Hearth, King's Landing are like the only castles that they feature in this episode, in the show opening. Now, I don't know what the other ones are going to be. This is going to be a spoiler podcast. It totally will be. However, I don't have any inside information. I'm finding things out just as quickly as you guys are. So, that said, yeah. So, I started watching this show. And when I started, I sat down and got into it, I was like, oh, this is really cool, because there's a lot of details and stuff into it. Now, the episode is starting, so let's talk about it. Well, now, when I first started watching the show, you go all the way back to the first season, first episode, starts with the little boy climbing up something, you know? Well, it actually starts talking about, you know, it starts with the White Walkers killing a member of the Night's Watch and someone escaping away. Then it goes into Bran climbing up something. Bran is climbing up something. He's watching the king arrive at Winterfell. This season starts with a little kid climbing up stuff, and he sees what he thought was the king of the north and the dragon queen arriving. And it ties in. This is the first episode of the last season, the first episode of the first season where we got to introduce to everybody. It starts off the same way, except that now, instead of being introduced to everybody, we're being reintroduced to everybody as adults. Because you got to remember, this show started 10 years ago. A lot of the actors in this show that we come to know and love started out as very young children and young adults. And now this is a very major part of their lives. For those of us who've watched the show, it's a major part of ours. And I love how that just comes together. That direction, that artistic vision to have it start off in those ways. And this time, it's kind of different. The last time a monarch came up to visit well, not visit, but last time a monarch came to Winterfell, the pageantry was there and stuff, and it wasn't basically two armies and a bunch of dragons, you know. Now you have Daenerys in her winter coat, Jon Snow in his 800-pound cloak, Arya's looking on at her brother. This episode is very, very much filled with, one of the things I want to talk about are reunions. A lot of reunions in this episode because now it's the end. And everybody who's been separated, particularly the Stark family, everybody who's been separated is now back together, you know. This is the first time that all of the Starks who left Winterfell in that first season who are still alive, are now back in Winterfell for this last season. So that's pretty cool. You have the reunion of Jon and Arya, Jon and Bran. Jon hadn't seen Arya or Bran since season 1. He'd been with Sansa since season 6. Yep, since season 6. But he hasn't seen Arya or Bran since season 1. They'd been children the last time he saw them. You get a shot of Tyrion returning to Winterfell. Tyrion's character, played by Peter Dinklage, is a fascinating one because he's one of the few characters, if not the only character, who's actually been in scenes with every other main character in the show. You know, like I think the only person that he has never been on screen with was Ramsay Bolton. And yeah, that's pretty much it, because everybody else has pretty much been partnered up with just their group, whether they're in Essos or King's Landing or the Twins or, the Riverlands and stuff, had all been pretty much separated. It's like several different units that film in this show. And Tyrion had been pretty much on screen with just about every main character in this show besides the Boltons and the Freys. Yeah, Tyrion has never been with the Freys either. So pretty much he's been with everybody else, though. He's worked pretty much side by side. And the Sand Snakes. He'd never been with the Sand Snakes. So, wait. I think he has. Been with the Sand Snakes. But yeah, anyway. The dragons show up. Everybody's all marveled and stuff. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about for this season is how they're setting up a lot of different things. Now, coming up on the scene now where Bran and Jon reunite. And the last time Jon had saw Bran was unconscious from being pushed out of the window by Jaime. And Jon is just filled with emotion to see his brother, as any older brother would be. And of course, we all know at this point, Jon is not Bran's brother, but he's his cousin, but he doesn't know that yet. Bran, the three-eyed raven, is a little loose. He actually made a joke in this scene. He's not, wound up too tight, which is good. He's not wound up too tight. And again, I'm watching this as I give my commentary towards it. So this first episode is pretty much commentary. Then I'll get into some other thoughts and stuff as we go. You have Lyanna Mormont right up front, looking as Lyanna Mormonty as ever. And then Daenerys is just showing up, just looking pretty smug. Meanwhile, Sansa is just looking just like, like, why is this bitch in my house? And then Bran just says, hey, look, we don't have time for any of this right now. All this pleasantries, that's great. Night King has your dragon. He has an ice dragon, and they are coming. The wall is down, and they are on their way. And the funniest part about this shit is Sansa's reaction. Sansa's facial reactions in this episodes are hilarious, because when Bran just basically tells everybody what just happened in the last episode of the series, her face is like, oh yeah, that's right. You haven't been here to know about Bran and how he can see stuff now. Yeah, we need to sit and talk about this. Now, in this next scene, Lord Umber, who's confused at how to address Jon and everyone else, He's been